Hey. Hello. Welcome to week 3, everybody. So excited. Okay, let's dive. We're going to have demos, first of all, of course. And then Chris is going to do the learning module on pair programming. So I'm excited to see what he has to say. And then Mike will cover our issues for the upcoming week. And yeah, and I'm doing, what's that called? Office hours. I'm doing office hours this week. So I'll post something later on the Slack channel so we can, I know, it's late for me, 6 o'clock, it's my bedtime. Okay, so sad. All right, let's get started. Who would like to demo first?
We could go for it. Dee, you wanna? All right, let's go ahead and do ours.
Okay, all right, Brittany and Dee.
Okay. I think Dee's gonna share her screen. Great. Okay. And everyone see that all right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, so this week we added a form to our welcome page so that users could join an existing list if they had a token shared with them. So if a user tries to put in a 3-word token that doesn't exist, so the list doesn't actually exist, they'll be shown this beautiful error message that Rachel and Viet helped design that component. And then once they start to type again in that field, that error message will go away. So if they try to put in an existing, or they try to join an existing list, that will then take the user to the list and they can begin to add their items to it as well. And I think Dee's going to talk about some of the challenges that we had with this issue.
Yeah, so the main challenge we had with this issue was checking the database whenever a user submits their input to see if the token actually exists or not. We tried at first using React Firebase hooks, the use collection hook, but that was not working for us. We just couldn't figure out how to determine if the input entered would check to see if the token existed in the collection. So Chris gave us some advice and mentioned that maybe it would be better if we created a collection table in the database that just held all of the user tokens. So that's what we did instead. And so in the database, we created this users token collection. And then in our code, we were able to query the database to check to see if the input entered in the form matched any of the names of the token. And therefore, we were able to find if a token actually existed or not.
Very nice.
And that's pretty much it. If anyone has any further questions, I know we're trying to cut down on demo time this time around.
Can you show me where, I'm just trying to remember where you're adding that new token, like if somebody's creating a new list, where does that live in the code?
Let me share that part. Can you see?
Yep.
The code?
VS Code.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is where we did the query to find whether or not the token name in the database equaled the token input. And if we found it, then we set the token. And we set the token in local storage. And then we also pulled in props from, where was it? From the app. So that because we were having, I don't know how to explain it. We were having like an issue where the app component wasn't being like the app token state wasn't being updated when we set the token with just local storage. So we had to pass the set token to also have it be updated in app, because it was kind of doing this weird little glitch where once you refresh the page, then the token state was updated. So if that makes sense.
Yeah,
It
I think
does.
if I can just like add to that, I think it was maybe that the token was being saved, but because it wasn't actually being set as state, nothing was re-rendering.
Oh, yeah.
So that's when Dee came up with the idea to do prop drilling and pass that down.
And then I saw, was it an app that you're adding the token, like actually adding that token to the user token collection or something?
Line 17.
db.collection line 17. Yeah. Cool. So that's where you're actually storing it in the collection in
Yes.
Firestore. So then
Mhm.
later somebody can check to see if it's there. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice.
great job, y'all. Good job being able to pivot and, rework your data model, even if it wasn't necessarily part of the original scope of the ticket. That kind of stuff happens, out in the real world all the time. So great job, working on your feet.
Thank you. And thanks for that suggestion. It was really helpful.
And also with,
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
oh, I was just going to say with regards to the demo, really good job giving us a very high level and pertinent info demo. Yeah, so very good.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. I think we tried to take the advice that we were given last week and sort of think, okay, what should we actually be demoing today? So thank you.
Yeah, that was awesome.
What was I going to say? Oh, I think it was really good noticing on your part, because I think most of the cohorts, most of the teams that I've worked with in the past, either check like just to see if that list is empty, right? The list that exists is empty, which isn't really doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It mostly gets the job done, like 99% of the time, but like this is a more precise solution.
I realized in my attempt at this that I had just checked for the emptiness as well.
Yeah, that's
so
what we
that
were
was funny.
gonna do initially. But then I was like, but what if the list just doesn't have any items yet?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Because coming up, I mean, we do delete items coming up, right? In a couple of stories, we end up deleting items, so definitely can happen. Cool, nice job.
All right, yeah, really good.
Thank you.
All right, Rachel and Viet.
I'm going to share my screen. Can you all see the app?
Yep.
Okay, so we were tasked this week with adding, sorry, what's the right word? Adding an error message if the user is adding an item that already lists, so checking for duplicates. So we were working with the add your item form. And so here I'll quickly show you my list. So it has hello and jello. And so if we try and add hello with a capital O or some special characters, we get this error message as well. So we're using the same error component. And then if I go to add another character or a space or delete, it will get rid of the error message, so I can go to enter again. And then it'll actually save what the user is inputting in the list view. So now I'll go over to Viet and we'll look at the Firestore to kind of see that, and then we'll go into the code a little bit.
Yeah, so y'all can see that we have a cleaned up item name property there that is storing on the right side, that's storing the,
Here, if we look at Jello.
Right, sorry. The input that's been stripped of special characters and it's been made lowercase. You can also see that in item name that we have the exact user input as they put it in, special characters and all. And we did this, and if we look at our code, we did this by using a regular expression. So on that line there, the clean, is it line 36? The clean input, we're just taking the input, making it lowercase, everything lowercase, and replacing it with a space or with nothing, basically. So what that regular expression is saying is hey, we're going to match any non-alphanumeric character and the underscore. Weird thing is I've checked and it says the \W is supposed to match the underscore, but we couldn't get into match. So we had to put in the underscore explicitly with it. And the asterisk there is just saying like match, it's a greedy match 0 through as many characters as you can that conforms with this regular expression, and strip it all out. Yeah, and that's the regular expression in a nutshell there. And yeah, just wanted to point out on line 19, we're just resetting the error to false so that it gets rid of the error message in the handle form change. So that's, if anything in the form changes, we add a character, we delete a character, that error message goes away. Thanks, Mike, for that suggestion, because we were doing it a different way that was would have done did the same thing, but I think this is kind of closer to what we would expect out of when you're using most applications. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what we did. Any of you have any questions about anything?
Do you want to talk about the reusable error component that you created?
Sure. Yeah, so we had something that wasn't quite as reusable, and Brittany and Dee kind of went in and made it so that we could pass the error message as props, a string basically. So they have their error message, we have ours, and we did a little bit of styling on it, the red X, also just to have the text also be red so it pops a little bit. And Chris's suggestion was we also check prop types, which we're doing there. We're checking that it's a string. We're requiring something to be passed to the error component, or the error message, sorry, the prop. Yeah, and this actually, we were trying to test out the prop types for a while and couldn't figure out why it wasn't giving us errors, and it's because we weren't making an error happen. So that took us a little while. Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that's so handy, like to be able to use that component in a couple of different places.
Yeah,
it was. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that also it's really great. This type of reusable component is really nice because it's kind of a design component, or a style component, and so it'll ensure that you have the same look and feel everywhere. So it's it's really nice. Yeah, like all error messages will look the same, right?
Yeah, I thought it was it's pretty fun that both teams were able to use it, and it's kind of like take what was there and then expand on it. So that was cool.
Yeah, good stuff, y'all.
Super good. Any other questions? Nice work, everyone. It's really fun to get there.
I saw something. I had a question. I saw something actually on Instagram today. Have you all used styled components? Like I guess is that?
We use emotion, which is basically style components.
Okay. Is that a better way to style, or is what we're doing like okay? Also,
I feel like you always have to be scary trepidatious throwing around the word better around developers and different tools.
Right.
But it's just a different way. A lot of people really like it because it's a really easy way to make those kinds of design styled components like you did here, where it'll have you can make error message component and just be adding in the the styling around it, and then when you use that component, it's styled like you had made it, and your it's just is slightly different feeling, and I like them a lot. Yeah.
Same. One of the really nice things about it is you don't get too many style surprises. So if you're writing traditional CSS or even SAS, you have to be a little more careful to make sure that your styles aren't leaking onto anything else. But with a styled type component, those styles are contained to that particular thing that you've created. So that's one nice thing about it.
Also, you can utilize JavaScript inside of them a lot easier, which is nice. Yeah.
So it sounds like there's no like best practice. It's just kind of like what your team decides on, what people prefer, and then there are definitely maybe some benefits to using styled components.
Yeah, I think that different teams use different things for sure.
Yeah, and there are trade-offs as well that we could discuss too, like in terms of the JavaScript performance versus native CSS performance. You know, there's kind of different trade-offs here and there, and different teams will make different decisions.
Yeah.
But everyone always has an opinion, usually.
Oh yeah.
Do you have a preference, Chris?
I don't. That's how I'd put it.
It depends.
I'll work with either of them. Currently at my job right now, we're doing a big performance kick to really try to increase the performance of some of our pages. And we have way too much JavaScript in our pages. So I'm very much in a mindset right now of trying to be like, how can I remove and reduce JavaScript and instead rely more on basic browser functionality? But that's just like where my brain is at right now. There are also just many advantages to using styled components and using the CSS in JS pattern, but it's a divisive topic. It's something that you see as a common talking point between the perspectives of developers who favor the JavaScript side of development versus developers who are more fluent in like the HTML and CSS side of development. Like they're really just kind of competing philosophies, and like any competing philosophy, it sort of pays to play both sides. So,
right. Thanks.
Awesome. All right, let's move on to our learning module. So I will pass it off to Chris.
Cool. So today I'm going to be chatting with y'all about pair programming. So I recognize that the format of the way that we're giving you these presentations is a little bit weird in the sense that y'all already have been pair programming, right? I'm not going to be talking to you about some new subject that you're not familiar with. You know, so this can be very much a dialogue, and I'm going to, as part of this, kind of ask you like, how has paired programming been going? And so we'll kind of have a back and forth on this. Let me go and share my screen here and get presenting. Which is somewhere on my screen. I always get lost with Google Slides. Oh, here it is.
It's like there, yeah.
Yeah, Zoom is just hiding it from me. Okay, so pair programming. First, let's kind of talk about what is it. So in a traditional environment, not necessarily in a remote environment, it's when two developers pretty much sit together in front of a computer and both take turns writing code using just one keyboard together. Usually people shake out into one of two roles during the process of paired programming. Those are the driver and the navigator. And it's pretty common to switch roles as you go. You won't be doing just one of these things all the time. You'll probably fill both of these roles in your careers. And as you're pairing with each other right now, I'm sure. So between those two people, the driver is the person who's currently in control and who is actually responsible for writing the code. This person is going to be verbalizing their thinking process out loud as they're coding, you know, and communicating as much as they can with the navigator, you know, being like, okay, I think we need to do this, this, and this in order to achieve our current goal. You know, what do you think about that? And they're ultimately really the person who's thinking at the lowest level, primarily about the code. So the person next to them is the navigator. And just like if you're, I don't know, you know, in a car and you're going somewhere with somebody, one person is driving the car and the other person is navigating, right? Like looking at their phone, looking at a map, and kind of telling the other person like what's coming up and where they're trying to go. The same thing are going to be true of writing code together. So this person is, offering guidance, kind of doing some of the similar things that you might do during a code review process, but instead kind of like verbalizing it as you're working through things together, kind of bouncing things back and forth. And this person might also, be someone who is looking up information and doing research while the other person is coding. They might be looking up documentation for APIs, or stuff like that. But really their role is just to kind of serve as an advisor and as a resource for the driver. And I'll make a quick note about the setup that you can see pictured over here on the right with these two people. Pretty frequently, a way that people will choose to pair programming or to pair program when they have the ability to do so in person is to have two monitors side by side. There's a couple different configurations I've seen people do this with. I've done it before where each person has a computer connected to one of the two monitors and it sort of like crisscrosses. So you've got your computer in front of you and then you can look up at the monitor and see what the other person is doing. Other people like to have both monitors plugged into one person's computer so both people can always just see what the driver is doing. But basically it's a strategy to just kind of give you more visibility into what each other person is doing and to help the two people like share one computer. Again, this is very much like a physical in-person thing. This is something that maybe you've gotten a chance to try before, or maybe you'll get a chance to try at an office space, down the road, maybe, who knows, or maybe you're gonna end up being completely remote anyways. So let's also talk about paired programming remotely. So there are tons of really cool tools that can make pair programming remotely even more collaborative, but you can do incredible collaboration even with a pretty simple setup. So there's kind of a cycle to this, and I think we'll start at the top left here, where two developers just hop on a video or screen share call, which I'm sure is something y'all are all familiar with now, having worked on the project and paired on certain things. The driver is usually the person who is sharing their screen and is doing the coding, while the navigator is, of course, providing feedback and asking questions about the code. So when you want to switch or have the navigator look at some code and maybe validate that it works on their machine or run some tests or something like that, it's good to have the driver push the code up to the remote repository, like push up to your branch or whatever, and have the navigator pull that code down locally. And like I said, the navigator can run it to make sure it works on their machine, for example, is like a really common thing. Or maybe they just want to pull the code down so that they can look around and navigate within the branch and within the code base to kind of help inform the driver. But finally, with our last step here, one other really good reason to push your code up is so that you can swap those roles and kind of start back at step one and have the driver and navigator switch places. And there's a lot of value to doing that. You might kind of wonder like, oh, why would I have these two people switch roles if they've already kind of gotten used to what they're doing? But it's a really good practice to keep yourself agile, keep yourself on your feet, and have both people engaged, at a low level with the code. You're gonna be able to come up kind of with more ideas, I think, and be able to just kind of mix things up a little bit better if you're switching up the roles. Keeps people from getting bored, or just kind of too complacent with what they're doing at the moment too. So that's a really good thing. And it also is great if you're in a situation where, like, let's say you've joined a new company and you're pairing with, a senior software engineer who's been at the company for years and years. It might be tempting to just like let them kind of do all of the driving work and just kind of like watch what they're doing. But don't do that because you're leaving so much great learning and opportunities on the table that you could be getting by being the driver in that situation. So definitely, switch up driving and navigation. You don't want to do it like too often. Like you don't want to have like one person write like one line of code and then switch. Usually a good way to kind of divide it up is by like a chunk of functionality or like a specific feature that you want to implement. And then once that's done, switch it back over to the other person and then they can build the next piece of functionality or whatever it is that you need. And with that, yeah, let's also kind of talk about the mindset and attitude behind paired programming. So pairing is a bit of an exercise in sharing your toys, like your Legos. It can oftentimes be more efficient to just kind of go with what your pairing partner's idea is than to argue on the approach back and forth. you know, pairing is, it's all about sharing. It's all about, you know, brainstorming new things. And it's good to have a beginner's mind here to just kind of embrace the doubt that you have about something and to just try things. I'll do that pretty often when I'm pairing with someone. If they like give an idea that sort of off the cuff to me is like, oh, you know, I wouldn't do it that way, or, oh, I think this other way is better. It's good to just kind of be like, okay, let's try it. Like, let's see where it goes. And maybe you're right, and it actually wasn't like the smartest idea, but in the process of trying it out, you'll kind of be able to like demonstrate to the other person like, oh, it's causing like problem X, Y, and Z, let's try something else. And then that's a learning opportunity for them. Or maybe you were totally wrong, and the way that they're going to do something is actually really interesting and cool, and it's just something that you haven't, you know, tried before. So pair programming is always should be like an open and exploratory space. I feel like that's a really important aspect of the mindset. The second bullet point here is that the primary focus shouldn't be on teaching or mentorship. The primary focus should be on getting the actual work done, you know, on really like shipping the current piece of work that you're doing. It becomes even especially more important, I think, when you're in like an office environment and you are not only taking one person's working hours, but two people's working hours to work on a given project. So it's really important to like continue to focus on the task at hand. But all that being said, like I think teaching and mentorship and learning are excellent secondary objectives for paired programming. And they're one of the biggest advantages, I think, to doing it. And it's a really great way too to you know, just rub shoulders with other engineers on your team and learn from them. And also to pass on some of your own best practices and lessons that you've learned. So still a really good goal, I think, for paired programming. Let's see. The driver should always try to seek agreement before proceeding with whatever you're working on. So, you know, paired programming is, you know, it's a team game, and if you aren't able to kind of arrive at an agreement around like what you want to build, how you want to build it, just going off and doing it is maybe going to ruffle people's feathers. It's not going to be the most efficient way of approaching things. So definitely talk before coding. You know, don't just like start coding and then try to avoid talking about things. You know, start with a plan and then kind of go from there. And, you know, on the flip side, from the navigation, you know, it's always good to ask questions as opposed to telling the driver what to do. That kind of comes back to the point that I said earlier about like being willing to try new things and being open to new ideas. In the same way, you know, you don't want to like stifle the creativity of the person who's driving. And, you know, you as a person who may be the driver working with a more experienced engineer, like you're ultimately going to learn more if that person sort of asks you about your approach rather than just like telling you what to do, you know? So that's a really, I think, key aspect too of the mindset and attitude for pairing. Oops. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to take a quick pause here. And I think what would be cool is maybe we could just go around the room and just talk about sort of how this is aligned with your own paired programming experience, and if you've got any, you know, thoughts or feelings that you want to share with us on the subject. Should we include our mentors on this, or should we just go with our students? What's our time look like here?
Let's start with participants maybe, and then see how our time goes. How does that sound?
That sounds good. So does anybody have any thoughts that they want to share off the cuff here? Want to go first?
I can jump in. I just want to say, like, so far, my peer programming experience with my team members here has been awesome. Just like everything that you're suggesting has, I think, just been happening because we're also focused on collaboration and making sure that this is a really positive experience. I have had pair programming experiences in the past where someone might not have been as aware and maybe like took over the driving when it was my turn to drive, or, you know, maybe I wasn't as good about checking in. which has definitely been a goal to really be a good partner. But just in Collab Lab so far, everyone has been super amazing to pair with.
Nice. Any other thoughts anybody wants to share? I also feel like we shouldn't necessarily have to be exhaustive here too. But if anyone has any anecdotes or interesting points that they've maybe picked up about paired programming through the Collab Lab, that would be interesting to hear too.
This isn't necessarily through Collab Lab, but we have been using the live share feature on VS Code, and I think that's been really helpful with just pair programming in general. Just kind of turn that on, and you can, I guess, you can allow your screen to follow the other person's cursor, or just kind of when that gets a little bit too much, you can turn that feature off. But yeah, I mean, I think the live share on VS Code has been really helpful for pair programming.
Good stuff. Yeah, and we'll actually on the last slide get into some additional resources for helping with paired programming, like technologies and things like that. But yeah, that's definitely one of the plugins that comes up. So I'll throw out this too, like if anyone has any questions or anything, like these don't have to be answers, because these can just be questions for me too on paired programming, anything I can clarify.
Do you all, the mentors, do you all pair program much in your like daily, in your jobs?
I saw some nods. Do y'all want to?
Sure.
Go for it.
Yeah. I mean, in my daily programming, I'm usually pairing maybe between 30 and 50% of the time. Yes, somewhere around there. And when I'm doing it, one thing I've noticed is I can really catch, or I notice myself doing bad practices sometimes. And I always can find it when I start saying the exact characters that I want typed, I guess when I'm driving. And I think it's a really good way to catch yourself, because if you can say, hey, we're going to destructure this and give it a default value, rather than saying, hey, let's curly brackets and then blah, blah, blah. It's a general idea of how you can see if somebody's actually following along with where are we going? What's our plan here? But that was a little bit beyond the question. Yeah, 30 to 50% of the time.
How about you, Lauren?
And yeah, we pair quite a bit, or we'll even jump on like a group call with the whole team if we're starting to work on maybe a bigger feature and we need to talk about ideas and like have bigger ideas that we want to talk about. We'll pair in that way, or mob a program, I guess, in that way. And then, yeah, it's not a certain percentage of the time, but I'm definitely hopping on a call with people every day just to look at stuff together.
Nice. For me, it's kind of been all over the board, depending on the company that I'm at. The company that I started at would actually have paired programming be part of the planning process. Like whenever we would pull up a ticket to work on, it would be just like the Collab Lab, where it would be like, okay, these two people are assigned to this ticket, they're going to pair on it. And I've really enjoyed environments like that. I think it was really instrumental for me as a growing junior developer. That was really great there. I'd say like at Zapier, I'm on a fairly senior team now, and I would have to estimate we probably pair like maybe 10% of the time. It's kind of like on those things that it's like a really tough problem, or if I'm just like totally stumped on something, I'll like pull someone in to pair. To be honest, I would like to pair more at my organization, because sometimes I get lonely. There are definite advantages to pairing when it comes to remote work and stuff like that. And I actually anticipate that as my team ramps up with more junior hires, which is something that we haven't done as much in the past, but we're going to start doing more in the future. I want to get more deeply into pairing with my team, because I think that's going to help us to build cohesion. But yeah, it really kind of just depends on your team and the culture of the company that you end up at. But you yourself can also in your own work, be an advocate for paired programming and to like just reach out and pair with people, even if it's not necessarily like part of the ingrained engineering culture either. So.
That's funny. I feel the same way. Like if I'm kind of getting lonely and I just want to work on a problem with somebody, I'll just reach out, right? Like, because we don't do it like a huge percentage of the time. Sometimes you just want to talk to somebody through a problem, and it's nice to just hang out with someone.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I definitely would say the same thing. One thing also that we've started doing is pair PR reviews and mob PR reviews, which is kind of mixing together what we've been talking about for PR reviews and pairing. That's kind of
Yeah, those are great too. I just did one of those last week.
kind of fun.
With the mob programming, how do you make sure that everyone is like getting an opportunity to participate, or is that a lot harder to do when it's more than 2 people?
I would say for mob programming, in the way that we've practiced it, it's more like, okay, we have this big thing that we need to build, and we need to just sort of strategize and brainstorm, okay, how are we going to manage state for this? What's the best approach to take? And it's not so much like really writing code. So maybe I'm using the wrong words about mob programming. It's more like a strategy session. You know what I mean? I can't, yeah, that would be challenging, I think. But I think some other teams at my company will do that, where one person, like it's their feature that they're working on, but other people will jump on the call and they're sort of talking about it while that person is like the person who's typing, right? You know what I mean? Just to help that person get started and get on their way, I guess.
Yeah, I would echo, for a situation where it's like more than 2 people, it's usually going to be like more higher architectural kind of focused stuff that you're going to be discussing. But it's not impossible to write code with like 3 people. I've seen it done, but you just want to really make sure that you're spending your time efficiently and effectively, because now you're spending 3 people's times. Okay. Any last thoughts? There's another slide I'm going to go to next that has some resources that we'll walk through, but just one last call for any other thoughts or feelings people have on the topic.
Question.
Cool.
So when you're pair programming, so I feel like when I'm pair programming and I'm the driver, I tend to just write, and then explain afterwards what I have done. And should you be talking through your code as you're writing it, or should you like, hey, I'm going to do this, do it, and then explain? Like, what's your strategy for keeping your partner in the loop when you're doing something, and so they're not just like sitting there staring at you?
Yeah, I totally relate that like a certain amount of coding just has to be kind of felt out with your fingers, right? Like you kind of have to code your way out of something sometimes, and you can't always just articulate exactly the path that you're going to take through it, you know? So for me, I like to kind of adopt a little bit of a mix. Like I'll talk through like what I think I need to start with. And sometimes that's just a complete guess. Like I'll just be like, I don't even know where to start on this problem. I'm just going to start building this thing. And I'll kind of tell my navigator, like, I think this is where we should start. Let's try this. And then, you know, maybe I'll start typing out some boilerplate code, or maybe I'll kind of copy and paste something in and start modifying it. But then as you begin to just kind of work through the code and like run into like problems or run into things that you realize aren't going to work, I think articulating those is a really important aspect, because then you can still kind of be just like futzing through and struggling with some code. But at the same time, you're keeping your navigator up to date with like kind of what's going on in your brain and kind of keeping them in sync with what you're thinking about. And if you are really well synced up on that kind of stuff, then you begin to sort of function as one brain almost, and they can start to be like, oh yeah, this won't be a problem, but what about this? Have you thought about maybe adding this function or something like that, you know? So definitely over communicate and try to get as much out of your brain as you can. But sometimes it's a gradual process that you have to just kind of talk through as you work on stuff, right?
And One thing I would say is also I've found that with certain people that you pair program with a lot, I've gotten almost this like mind meld, I guess, that you get to sometimes, and sometimes really great pair programming is really nice because you can communicate much easier than you would have thought. Yeah.
And some of it also just, I think, will come with experience too. You know, as you develop more and more as an engineer, you'll begin to be able to better and better articulate how it is that you're thinking about a given technical concept. So like to some extent, just kind of like expect that it will be a little tough at the beginning to articulate those things, but it's a skill that you'll for sure like build over time. Cool. All right, well, let's grab this last slide here. So this particular presentation is a little bit unlike the others because it's short and then just gives us a whole bunch of extra resources to explore at the end here, which is fun. So I'm gonna share this slide with y'all so that you can look through some of this. Some of them are things we've already talked about. Some of them are just articles that you can work through on your own, but there's a couple things here that I want to call out that I think are interesting. So in this article on ways that pair programming works and how it can change your life, they've got a really good little section here on the benefits of remote pair programming that I wanted to just quickly jog through with y'all. So some of the things that are beneficial specifically in a remote environment are pairing gives you constant feedback. That can be really tough in a remote environment where you have to be working on your own and you don't necessarily get that immediate feedback that you would have from office workers like who might be next to you and looking at your code. So it's a really good way to get that feedback back, which I think is really critical for kind of knowing how you're doing, right? And to also kind of defeat some of those feelings of anxiety that you might have as a remote worker. It can also help you to reduce your frustration. So I'm sure that you don't need me to tell you this, but coding can be incredibly frustrating sometimes. And just having another person there to share that burden with you sometimes can make something go from frustrating to fun as you laugh at just how difficult something is. Remote work also, sometimes it's hard to focus, right? Like sometimes social media or just other things going on in the world can be really distracting. So I've found that pairing can definitely be a way to help increase your focus and kind of have like accountability a little bit with another partner to help you to remain on task with the work. Now that's kind of a double-edged sword, right? As a result, pair programming requires a lot of focus. And so, you know, I think it's also important to be empathetic to your own self and to realize that you're going to need to take breaks, you know, like don't expect to just pair program 8 hours a day every day either, you know. Pair programming also is a really great way to get social interaction, which, you know, again, kind of comes back to the fact that, yeah, if you're going to become a remote worker, you might be kind of lonely a little bit. That's going to be something we all continue to deal with throughout the course of the pandemic. And, you know, for people who continue to have remote jobs afterwards, it's still going to be, you know, a big factor. So pairing is another great way to get social interaction. I think I already touched on accountability there with the increased focus. Of course, pairing is another great way to build your collaborative skills. There's plenty of engineers out there who are really great at building solutions and understanding technical complexity, but who are not as great at articulating it and explaining it to other people and working on a team with other people on those kinds of things. So paired programming is a really great way to build what, you know, soft skills. I feel like that's kind of a stupid term for those because they're not that, they're way more important than that makes it sound, but building up those social skills, you know, it's really important. It's also a great way to get real world experience as part of a team in terms of like using Git and version control. Being able to share your code with someone else, push up branches and do that kind of thing is really going to give you more practice in that arena. And lastly, it's going to be a great opportunity for mentorship. Honestly, some of the best lessons that I've learned in terms of how to be a more effective engineer or how to like organize my development flow or use shortcuts or all kinds of little things like that, I've just picked up here and there from pairing with other really experienced engineers. And it's something that I also try to do too when I pair with people is like, I'll just give them like quick little tips about using the terminal or ways that they can improve their IDE usage. Like just little stuff like that all the time will really help you to just become more efficient and effective as an engineer. And it's also a great opportunity too to talk through stuff like architecture or scaling of applications, and just kind of like absorb some of that stuff that you might not necessarily get otherwise if you're just sort of working in isolation. So that's a really great section, I think, that I wanted to call out from this article, but definitely feel free to dig in here and read through the rest of this too. There's another article in here that I mentioned before, is this 10 collaborative coding tools. So if y'all want more options for IDE plugins or other tools, I think the Visual Studio Code stuff shows up in here as well. Definitely check this out. Another tool that I really recommend if you haven't already experienced it is Codepen. So Codepen is just a way to really quickly just show someone like a proof of concept. If you're maybe talking about like, oh, how does this particular feature work in HTML and CSS? Like, here's, you could send someone an example, or you could even build a Codepen that demonstrates like a problem that you're currently facing and then send it to a teammate, and then they can like mess with that Codepen. So really great tool for sharing stuff. But yeah, encourage you to take a look through this list. Got a lot of good resources in there. And let's see, I think that this this last article also had some really good stuff. The power of paired programming lies in the execution. Right, this has like just a lot of really good kind of snippets of little pieces of advice, some of which we've covered, like not necessarily telling your other partner what to do, but also just like to continue to stay on focus and stay in sync. And there's some interesting like kind of back and forth that you'll experience in these articles actually, in terms of opinions on sort of what's best when it comes to paired programming. Like some people are pro IDE sharing tools, some people are kind of against it. And I think that you'll just sort of have to discover your own personal pairing style as you proceed as an engineer. But yeah, I'm not gonna exhaustively go through all these links. Y'all can feel free to peruse those at your leisure later on. But yeah, that's basically our paired programming presentation. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing. And yeah, if y'all have any additional questions, totally feel free to ask. But otherwise, I think we've got to head into our issue stuff now, right?
Yep.
Cool.
So yeah, any other questions or anything for me before we break?
That was awesome. Great discussion. Great presentation. Thank you. Really good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd never really thought about the fact that I feel like 95% of the plugins that I use came from pair programming sessions. Like that's like the first thing that, wait, what's that plugin? And I had never thought about it until you mentioned something about that. Yeah. All right, issues. Let's see. So we're doing 7 and 8 this week, right? Right.
Sounds right.
Yep.
All right. Cool. So 7 is, as a user, I want to see a welcoming prompt to add my first item if my list is empty to help me get oriented to how the app works. And the acceptance criteria is the list view when there are no items to display should show a prompt, i.e. a button for the user to add their first item. This one we have, is it here? No. The screenshots here, the mock-ups are a little bit, little light in terms of what all is there, but this is more or less a screenshot of what it can look like if there's no items. Any questions? And it's not how it has to look, I guess, but this is just a sample mockup.
I guess that was going to be my question. I was kind of wondering if, in addition to the button, you could have like maybe a little modal pop up with a message in it or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can talk to the team and see what everyone wants to do. I would encourage you though not to don't get too far out of the scope or anything like a whole workflow around. So if you did want to have something, what would it be or anything like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I think the AC on this one, I might go and add this in there. So I think when you click on the button, you're supposed to go to the add item page is the idea. So you're on the list view, and if you don't have any items in your list, when you click on that button, you should navigate to the add item form.
Should we add that real quick?
Yeah, let's add that in there because that doesn't sound super clear to me.
Okay, so when user clicks on the button, or add item button, or just button?
It's up to you, that's fine.
Sure. They should be routed to the, it was the list item. Oh, wait, no, the add item page. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. All right. And issue number 8, cruising along. As a user, I want to mark an item on my shopping list as purchased, so the app can learn how often I buy different items. So the user is able to tap a checkbox or similar UI element to mark an item in the list as purchased. The item should be shown as checked for 24 hours after the purchase is made. And we assume the user does not need to buy the item again for at least 1 day. Now, I'll show a mock-up here, which you maybe saw when I clicked on it before. One thing to note is that we're not doing any of this stuff over here right now. It's the checkbox. And what we may want to think about is how the acceptance criteria is that it is checked for 24 hours after the user checks it. So we may want to think about how would we test for that, because it really probably wouldn't be very efficient to check and then wait 24 hours and see if your code works. So any ideas around that?
Sorry, it took me a while to find my screen
Yeah.
and unmute. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I remember one project where we had to test for something like this, where you needed to wait a certain amount of time, and there were some helper functions that we were able to use, or somehow we were able to kind of mimic that time. So I can kind of go back and look at some of those projects and see if I can figure that out.
Is it, I mean, does it have anything doing with like setting a timeout or something like that? Or is that kind of off of what you were thinking?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think, maybe not a timeout necessarily, but we could just manipulate data in the database, just manually.
Okay.
Or you could also just, while you're testing things out, be like, well, you know what, we're going to do it for 10 seconds instead of 24 hours, and then change the code around at the end so that it's 24 hours, just while you're playing with checkboxes and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah.
Oh, sorry. So I worked on a project in my boot camp. It wasn't my feature, but it was one of my teammates' features, and he had to, basically it was like a children's game where something had to be revealed on a certain day at a certain time. And he used this thing called like cron, like a cron scheduler, cron job or something. Is that like, have you heard of that?
Yeah. Cron jobs are used to execute things on a specified interval, right? And that would be interesting to use. I'd be interested to see.
I just don't know because the way he used it was really awesome, but I don't know if that's like too high level for this.
Yeah, I think I think if you were to do that, that would be really interesting. But it's not needed here.
Okay.
We're really, we'll be thinking about deriving it from the current time to a set time, right?
So Mike, you specified the word interval there. Was that kind of a hint as far as like, I said set timeout, but isn't there a set interval method that you can?
There is, yeah, there is a set interval method, and that is something that would execute on a given interval. But really in the case of this, we're probably just saving a time and then deriving how far we are from then.
Gotcha.
To determine whether or not it's checked. Yes.
So
but I don't want to get too into. I don't want to implement this. Just wanted to start thinking about things about how you would test test it.
Yeah. Okay.
All really good questions and ideas, by the way.
Yeah, I was, before we got into this discussion, that task was the one that kind of I found interesting. So if
7 or 8,
the one that we just talked about with the checkboxes. But
yeah,
again,
pairs this week are Viet and D, so it'll be the two of you.
But again, I'm open to either one.
I think if that one really popped out at you, both Rachel and I are feeling pretty flexible this week. Nothing's really like jumping out at us. So yeah, I think if you and D want to tackle that, and we'll take.
D, did you have a strong preference on what you wanted?
I have no preference.
Okay, cool.
We're all very flexible. I'm happy to work on anything.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm excited to see the solutions. Yeah.
Look at us. We got everything done with 1 minute to spare. You guys were rock stars this time. Look at that.
Perfect. Perfect presentation,
Awesome.
Perfect demos, perfect issues. Good job, everybody. Yeah, with these, this issue, I think, seems challenging. It's less challenging than it is at first. Try to reach for the simplest solution possible.
Right.
Like, it doesn't require super complicated solution.
Okay.
Yeah.
No atomic clocks or anything.
Yeah, I don't think so.
We're going to be testing exactly how precise that 24 hours is.
So could you like say, okay, we're going to keep track of what time the item was added and that, or this thing was clicked, and then once the current time minus that is equal to like this many seconds, something like that, maybe.
Yeah,
So remember, if you remember what your item, what the fields are on your item currently, like when you add an item into the Firestore, it has a name, it has a last purchase date. So, decide what kind of timestamp, like you want a milliseconds timestamp, right, to save it as that, and then that you'll use that value when you purchase it. That's what you're saving. And then you can check to see if it's been 24 hours.
Gotcha. So yeah, a couple of things just like popped into my mind. Like I know that Python has like a date time module, but I don't know if Firebase does have like a timestamping feature somewhere where if you like added something in there, it does have a timestamp. But sorry, I'm just talking. I'm just thinking out loud right now.
Yeah. I seem to recall that they do, but I don't know. I don't know the details. I just feel like that they do. But you can just add a, yeah. That's all.
Okay.
So keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate everything.
Yeah, keep it nice, as simple as can be. And then Chris linked in the chat to date, JavaScript dates. Always fun working with JavaScript dates.
Fun data object.
Good time.
And there are utilities that help deal with dates.
All right, everyone. Super. I am going to put the new pairing threads in Slack, and then I'll post something a little bit later. I'll post our YouTube chat or a recording, and then I'll post times for this coming week's office hours, and we can talk about what topics you're interested in, and yeah, take it from there. Nice work, everyone. And at the end of this week, we'll be halfway done.
Oh.
Amazing.
Nice. All right. Take care, everyone.
Cool.
Good work.
See ya.
Bye.
Have a good week.
Bye, all.
Bye.